Hi guys, welcome to another episode of JDM Masters, and today we are in Odaiba, which is a piece of reclaimed land standing in the Tokyo Bay, and we're at a very particularly special place. This is the Odaiba MegaWEB, which is located in Pallet Town. Now, this is a huge shopping facility that also happens to house behind me the Toyota City Showcase. This is perhaps the biggest Toyota showroom or car showroom in Japan. Perhaps it's not the world. And we're also going to go to the historic garage, which is also owned and maintained by Toyota. There's a lot of historic cars, and you can see restorations. Let's go check it out. Now we're on the first floor of the historic garage, where there is a display of WRC cars, everything right down from the first Celica up to the last 1990s Corolla WRC, and also the Yaris, which we're going to see later. And downstairs on the first floor, there is also a restoration shop right behind me over here. So just looking through the showcase, you can see the senior restoration mechanics just working on what appears to be a Bluebird. And this looks like another Chevrolet Impala. So they don't only restore Toyota cars, of course, mainly Toyota cars, as you can see, all of these different parts. You have a mixture of road car parts and racing car parts. As you can see, there's a triple AP racing clutch over here. There's a turbocharger, disc brakes, camshafts with the camshaft gears, old steering wheels, gauges, and a gearbox, cam head covers, carburetors, the beautiful Solex funnel carburetors over here. This gentleman is working on the Bluebird's Datsun 1.6 liter engine. The kids can even come here and watch close up at how the mechanics do their work in a field study. Good for kids who maybe want to be a car engineer or a mechanic in the future. And so this gentleman is removing a spark plug from an overhead engine. And look at it, he's just like looking in amazement. This is what a spark plug is, boy. It goes up to 12,000 RPM. Clearly this must be from, I think it could be from one of their Le Mans cars of the 1970s and 80s. Look at how large this vacuum brake pump is. Cute, they even have a old Honda Monkey compact motorcycle. Really nice to see how Toyota is not just focused on their own cars, but also consider other manufacturers' cars as part of automotive history. Now, like the Datsun 1000 Fuji sedan, this Toyota Pet Crown also competed in the same Mobigas Rally round Australia in 1957. This is special because it demonstrated how reliable Japanese cars could be late 1950s. Only packing a 1.5 liter engine with 48 horsepower, it had to carry 2 drivers, extra fuel, extra tires, and a lot of load. And just imagine taking this all one round around Australia's circumference. And it actually competed. The whole point of this rally is to complete it in one piece and make it back. And that itself is already quite a feat. So right now, as of January 2020, Toyota are showing a special Motorsports Heritage collection of their rally cars, which we're going to have a look at inside right now. Wow. Magnificent. There's some cars here which are never going to be seen outside of this showroom, and I'll show you why. Rallying is very different from road racing, where the driver and co-driver takes their car on time trials around real roads, on tarmac, on dirt and snow and gravel and all kinds of condition. And the most important part is reliability. A lot of these cars, by regulation, must be based on road cars, which therefore necessitates the manufacturers to homologate special models, like the Lancer Evolution, the Celica GT4, the Lancia Delta, Lancia Stratos, the Audi Quattro, and all these cars. But going back in the history of this into the 1970s, there wasn't anything known as special homologation. A lot of these cars were based on just the road models modified, usually by privateers, to compete in the rally. And it's all about endurance, it's all about reliability, and all about being able to sense the time and also preserve the car while running in order to keep running on to the next stage. If there were damages, very often the co-driver and the driver had to get out of the car, use some tools, for example, like to fix a fender, fix a spare tire, and then carry on until the end of the stage. Now you can see in this display here, there are 5 most important cars in Toyota's history. Now let's have a look at them. All right, so first off, the Toyota Celica twin-cam turbo TA64, 1985, driven by the famous WRC legendary driver Juha Kankkunen. The Celica Turbo was a rear-wheel drive car, turbocharged. It only had rear-wheel drive. Now Toyota was really strong, particularly in the Safari Rally, which is, I would say, the toughest WRC round, because although it didn't have a lot of twists and turns like in mountain stages, but the extreme weather and heat and the sand just put a huge toll on the reliability of these cars. So this TA64 is based on a Celica twin-cam road car modified to Group B specs. Now, curb weight of only 1,150 kilograms, using a 40 GTE engine, 2 liters, 4 cylinders, intercooled turbo, producing 326 horsepower. It had a McPherson's front strut and 4-link rigid rear suspension, lifted up, and a lot of parts like big fog lights, bull bar, roll cage and safety equipment, and all this was the specs used for the Safari Rally. Another point was that allowed in Group B regulations was wider fenders. So this is very different from the road car. Group B regulations were quite different from Group A, which the exterior had to look like a road car. For Group B, the rules were much more relaxed, and so they could experiment with different types of body. And another crazy modification for this Group B rally car is what appears to be the radiator placed on the tail of the trunk. Perhaps they calculated that airflow coming from the roof would enter into the radiator and come out through this little vent right here, and also giving it a bit of better aerodynamic downforce. But such was the Group B thinking of the 1980s. So this car was a winner of the Kenya Safari Rally. And winning the Safari Rally maybe was one of the contributing factors which makes Toyota cars so reliable today. In fact, they even test Land Cruisers in Australia, which is kind of the harshest environment. You've got to remember that everything tested in motorsports, from experimental technology, trial and error, and then perfected, all of that then eventually becomes used in road cars. Car companies learn a lot from motorsports because of that environment where they need to compete and develop new parts and make things more reliable, especially in rallying, where you need the car to maintain performance right until the very end. This is going to be a rare chance to look at the underbelly of a Group B car. The 1964 Celica rear-wheel drive is a live axle, but you can see right here the reinforcements made to the rear axle casing, and also the springs and the dampers. I guess back in the day it wasn't too different from the road car. The regulations allowed for more relaxed modifications to it in order to survive road rallying. What's this? No one has ever seen this before, but this is something that's really special. It is a crazy Group S cancelled rally car that was never ever raced. Now, back in the 1980s, the Group B, as I mentioned earlier with the previous Celica, was a mainstay of the WRC Championship style, where it had severe modifications on a road car. WRC management was about to launch another category called Group S. This was a step up from Group B, where the regulations to create rally machine were much less based on road cars, allowing them to put different technologies like 4-wheel drive. And so this was Toyota's experimental car based off the AW11 MR2. It had a mid-engine, but also had 4-wheel drive. Now this car unfortunately never saw run because Group S was cancelled due to a lot of accidents from Group B rally monsters having a severe power to weight ratio. We're talking about something like 500 horsepower and something which is less than a ton. Now, this car is very special because it was only one of 3 remaining 222D cars ever built. So this is one car left in Japan, and there are the 2 in Europe. One of them had a rear-wheel drive configuration with a longitudinal mounted engine. One had a transverse engine, and this is the only one that's existing today in Japan. Let's have a closer look at the details of this car. So, as I said earlier on, this is a Group S prototype from 1985, based on an AW11 MR2 body, but hugely modified with huge rear fenders, extensions, and the front's completely different. Perhaps only the center shell is the same, borrowing from a 3SGE water-cooled inline-4 turbocharged twin-cam engine, but severely modified to Group S specifications. A little bit different displacement. Here the official figures say 500 PS or more, but it's rumored to have at least 600 horsepower. Now 600 horsepower on something that weighs just barely over a ton is a recipe for disaster. But this is probably why Group S was cancelled all the better. Other modifications that are really different from the original AW101 is the front suspension, which was a racing style double wishbone front and rear, very different from the 5-link McPherson strut suspension of the original car. So Group S regulations allowed much more heavy modifications. You can see in the front, plexiglass front headlights. You have the original headlights with the big rally style fog lights. And the engine obviously sits behind. You have a radiator cooling system, much wider fenders, plexiglass interior, and the engine actually sits a bit more forward center than the original car, and that the whole entire rear of the car is actually a space frame tubing chassis. The body shell on top is just like a big canopy cover like that, which is why there are no rear windows. The rear track is much wider than the front to give that stability. Hidden underneath here is also a complicated 4-wheel drive system, the drivetrain built by X-Track sequential 6-speed, which was something very revolutionary in the 1980s. Only these taillights look like something out from the original AW11. So this is really just a taste of what Toyota was ready to field into the WRC world, and just, you know, it's crazy to think just the amount of money they spent on developing this car and then just having it cancelled like that. But nothing was ever wasted, because they used the lessons learned from developing this prototype into what would be their #1 WRC winner in the following years, which is that. Now, by this time, the Group B was abolished, Group S was abolished, and all remained was Group A. As I've said earlier, Group A is a regulation specification for road cars that needed to be homologated. The manufacturer had to make a minimum number of copies of road cars. So using that as a base, this is what you see. ST185 RC had the same bonnet vents at the intake for the timing belt, the escape pod vents here, and the drivetrain 3SGTE turbocharged water-cooled intercooler 4-wheel drive system. And this example here was driven by Juha Kankkunen, who was WRC champion before Mäkinen. Interestingly, his co-driver at that time, Nicky Grist, became the co-driver for Colin McRae when he went into Subaru. But anyway, the Toyota WRC cars, the Celica GT4, were winning WRCs and World Championships before Subaru and Mitsubishi. So for those of you who don't know about maybe Sega Rally, if you play Sega Rally, you will know about this famous Castrol livery. This is the winning car from the Australian Rally, which is perhaps the same spec as the Safari Rally you see, off-road gravel tires, the suspensions raised, huge tough one-piece, OZ Racing Rally with huge mud flaps like this. And this car is registered in Germany. Now, something interesting about rally cars, unlike racing cars which are used only in the circuit, rally cars have to be road legal. So all of them must be registered in a country with number plates. So which is another reason why Group A specifications must be very close to road car specs. Here's another look at why rally cars and racing cars are different. Let's have a look at the interior. You see familiar competition style roll cage and bucket seats and racing 6-point harnesses, but you also see a spare tire, because rallies are often conducted outside in the wild, in the desert or in the forest. If you had a puncture, the driver and the co-driver were the only ones who were allowed to change the spare tire or fix any damages. And on the dashboard you see a variety of switches which operate just about every single component in the car, from light switches to ignition and cutouts, and it was also necessary to have a rally computer, which is located in front of the co-driver. Now, rally computer is important because it's part of the timing. Rally stages are taken in special stages from point A to point B. So at the start of one stage, one car goes out and takes timing and ends the timing at the end of that stage. All of this information is then fed back and given to the management, and that's calculated. So a rally computer, if it was broken, the team would actually lose points. So making sure that that thing was working well was one of the important things in a rally competition. Can you see that little pin over there? Now, Group A car regulations specified that it was still had to be based on a road engine similar to the homologation car. So in this case, 3S GTE 2-liter 4-cylinder, 2-liter. Now you see here, it doesn't appear to have a lot of horsepower. 299, about 300, but the torque values were about in the 40 to 50 kilograms range. Now, the reason it has high torque and low horsepower because that little pin you saw there is actually a restrictor placed in the turbocharger to restrict power, but it could produce a lot of torque. This is one of the ways that the WRC management aimed to reduce the number of accidents and therefore improve safety coming from the monster Group B cars, which saw a lot of huge, serious, fatal accidents. So Group A was a safer way to run the competition, but these cars were still really, really fast. And now we have here the final WRC spec Celica GT4 called the ST205. Now, there's a little story about this car which I'm compelled to tell. The ST205 was released in 1995 following the huge success of the ST185, which we saw before. Same engine, same drivetrain, but in a wider, more advanced body, but the same 3S GTE engine. Road car producing 255 horsepower this time. The Group A ST205 was largely based on the previous 185 with the spill special editions. It was the first car to have the anti-lag bang 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 system in WRC cars. So Toyota actually pioneered that. So just a little bit about why the ST205 was a big improvement over the ST185. The body width was increased, therefore increasing track to give it more stability. And most important was this rear wing. The standard Celica non-GT4 wing was only up to here, but the GT4 had these risers which would raise the wing to give more downforce at a very nice attack angle. And so most of it was actually in the chassis, which is much stiffer, and it also had the super strut front suspension. Interestingly, the super strut suspension was really great on a road car, but in the WRC car, they experimented with it for a little while, but found that the camber characteristics and the stiffness was not really good. So they just threw it away and put back the conventional strut suspension back again. The engine was a lot improved, and it gave much better response and much better torque. So I really wish, that this car actually would have gone further and won more WRCs. Now, there's a little sad story about why the ST205 never really saw much success compared to the previous ST185. Now, TTE, which was a motorsports company doing racing for Toyota, managed in Europe, decided to play some small little tricks. So the restrictor that you saw in the 185 in the turbo is actually a small little restrictor plate placed inside the compressor to limit airflow, therefore limiting its horsepower to 300 horsepower. Now, torque could be much bigger values than that. That's the value that engineers could play around with. But for some reason, they decided that, they wanted to gain a bit more advantage. And then in 1995, you had Mitsubishi and Subaru and Ford and Peugeot all entering the WRC challenge, and competition was really, really stiff. The Toyota racing team probably saw that they tried to experiment or go around the rules. I'm not too sure, but it was a really, really clever mechanism in the end. They actually designed a restrictor that where it was boosted and put up to speed, it would actually open a diaphragm that would allow more air to enter the turbo and therefore increasing its total horsepower. Now, in sanctioned rallies or racing, there's something called scrutineering, in which officials would check and inspect the cars to see if illegal modifications were done. And this special restrictor was seen as an illegal modification, and therefore, as a result, Toyota Team Europe was stripped of all their points. It had only won one WRC round driven by Didier Auriol, and this was the winning car of that Auriol. You see the French flag on it. So they were stripped of their points, and they were banned from WRC for 1 year. So unfortunately, Toyota then exited the WRC, and it actually gave an opportunity for Subaru and Mitsubishi Rally Art to be the next Japanese manufacturers to win WRCs. But then that was not the end of the story. They would return in 1998 with this car. For you European WRC lovers, you'll know exactly what this is. It is a hatchback. It's a Corolla hatchback. This body style was never sold in Japan. It was based on the European AE111 Corolla of that generation. So by 1997, the Group A regulations had advanced. Makers could now use a new formula called the WR car, which didn't need to have the road car homologation examples. They could use a base model and put existing drivetrain and engine configurations into creating a World Rally car. Now this was probably in an aid to make cars more, development much more cheaper. So what Toyota actually did in the end of 1998 was take the ST205's engine and drivetrain mechanism and transplanted them into a more compact, shorter wheelbase, lighter AE111 three-door Corolla hatchback. And this is exactly what it did. This is the 1998 Corolla WRC. Let's have a look at the front. So a lot of the aerodynamics and development was probably at the front. You see huge over fenders, huge deep spoilers in the front, but not much on the side. It appears to be just from the normal road car. Rear fenders appear to be pulled. But anyway, inside this was the same 3S GTE engine producing 300 horsepower, this time with no cheating mechanisms, but a more advanced drivetrain. This is they had first time a sequential 6-speed gearbox, which was has a very interesting mechanism. And you can see here inside there is the gear shift mechanism on the center console, the conventional one, and also another smaller one near the steering wheel, which gave a little shorter response time from the steering wheel to the gear shift. This was a secondary joystick type experimental gear shift that Toyota was trying with this Corolla WRC.
What are you looking at?
Well, 1/28 scale and bigger models of all of those cars that we just saw. So, guys, you come here, you look at all these wonderful old rally cars and old race cars, and there's a wonderful shop here that you can buy the very same models that we saw upstairs.
With the dirt.
With the dirt. Well, that's obviously a fan sprayed on one, but really job well done. Ah, this is your department, Japonic. So these models are made by Ignition Model, which I must say has some of the really highest levels of craftsmanship and detailing. Unlike the Auto Art models, the doors and the bonnet it doesn't open, but it really looks so much like the real car. It's 28,000 yen, which is about $290 now, I think. But it's well worth it, I think, if you want a really good scale model. What impresses me most is the accuracy of the paint. I know some of these colors very well, like the silver or the white, and just looking at it, I would say it's really close to the real car.
Is that a Supra?
What is that, the Rocket Bunny one? Auto Art 2000 GT. I think for Auto Art, they produced this model really, really, really well. Look at the level of detail in the chrome, in the grille, and the headlight covers, and also the windscreen, rake, the shape of the door handles, and it's really, really well done. Oh, look at this! A TRD 2000 GT SW20 wide-bodied kit version. I've only seen the real car once, perhaps. And here you have a 124 Tamiya plastic model scale made beautifully to show the whole history of the WRC rally cars. Everything from Suzuki, Citroen, Subaru, Mitsubishi, and even the Nissan 200 SX, the famous Lancias, the Audi Quattro, you have some Fiat, and some Ford, of course, and the Alpine and Datsun, everything, and all of Toyota's cars on the other side over there. Lancer Evolution 4, Evolution 5, the 555 GC8, WRC, and the Group. These 4 cars, yeah, that's my era, man. You know, I was there. It just brings back so many memories. It's so cool. So guys, I hope you really enjoyed this video of the WRC cars and the historic garage and the restoration room. And let us know in the comments if you'd like us to go to other places and review maybe more Toyota cars. But for now, thank you for watching and catch you in the next video again. Peace out.